from the Lakeside Newsroom of the Henrico Citizen, your hometown news source since 2001. This is the Henrico News Minute with publisher Tom Lapis.
New details about a planned Henrico indoor sports arena, a COVID-19 update from the county's health director, and how many Henricoans have already cast their ballots in this year's election. We'll have details about those stories on a busy news day. It's Wednesday, October 14th, 2020. This is the Henrico News Minute. It's brought to you today by the Lakeside Farmers Market.
And now for the news.
Well, in a week and 1 day from now, the Henrico School Board will determine a course of action for the second 9 weeks of school. And yesterday, Henrico Health Director Danny Avula provided the county's Board of Supervisors with a mixed bag of analysis about the impact and spread of COVID-19 in the county and in the region. The good news, Avula said, is that Henrico's positivity percentage has been relatively steady recently, below 4% every day between September 21st and October 9th, with just one exception. But the bad news is that the county's case rate has been increasing mildly for the past 10 days, up from an average of 16 new cases per day October 3rd to 27 a day as of yesterday. The decision about whether or when to reopen public schools will depend on several factors, according to Avula, including what teachers and staff members think, what families think, and how prepared schools are to mitigate risk and address cases when they do occur. Said Avula, quote, "As kids come back to school, it is not reasonable to expect that we won't have any cases. There's no way to create a zero-risk scenario," end quote. Instead, he said success will involve identifying cases quickly and isolating them to prevent a larger outbreak. Henrico faces a unique divide, one that breaks largely along racial and geographic lines, Avula said, saying, quote, "Middle and upper middle income white families are very ready to go back to school, and then black families in the eastern part of the county are very apprehensive. They've had family members hospitalized or die from COVID," end quote. In Henrico and elsewhere, minorities are affected by the virus at a disproportionate rate. The Henrico School Superintendent Amy Cashwell also addressed the board last night. She said that the situation is, quote, "incredibly complex," and that officials realize there's probably no approach that they can take that will be perfect for everyone. You can read much more on this topic at henricocitizen.com right now by clicking on News and then Government. Well, the indoor arena and convocation center that Henrico County and the Rebke Company are planning at the current site of Virginia Center Commons Mall will look slightly different than originally planned. The county now intends to build the facility in a long, straight layout as opposed to the L-shaped structure they originally planned. That's according to Henrico Recreation and Parks Director Neil Luther, who told the Board of Supervisors that last night. The new design will streamline the indoor space, 12 basketball courts that are convertible to 24 volleyball courts, and also allow for a possible future expansion. Supervisors earlier this year discussed the possibility of adding an indoor track at some point in the future. At the board's meeting last night, supervisors approved about $1.9 million in funding that will be used to pay for the demolition of the former Sears building and some planning and design work for the arena project. The county earlier spent more than $8 million to purchase its 25-acre site within the VCC overall site from Rebke, which had bought the majority of the mall in January for $12.8 million. Rebke now owns or has a pending contract on the rest of the VCC site except for the American Family Fitness building. The company is planning a mixed-use development adjacent to the arena, and its first plans involve 55 townhomes. That's according to its co-founder, Rob Hargett. Henrico officials hope to have the existing building demolished by the end of March and a final construction contract in place by June 14th of 2021. They're targeting late summer 2022 for completion of the arena if all goes according to plan. On average of more than 1,700 Henricoans have cast ballots in person for the November 3rd election each day since September 18th. That was the first day for absentee voting in Virginia. Those numbers come courtesy of Henrico Registrar Mark Coakley. It amounts to more than 30,000 total votes cast in person so far, and Coakley anticipates another 30,000 people will do the same thing during the next 3 weeks. Coupled with the 46,000 ballots that his office has mailed to other absentee voters, it's shaping up to be Henrico's least crowded election day in 2 decades, he said. The county may see only about 70,000 voters show up to the polls on that day. The Board of Supervisors last night approved the temporary relocation of 4 voting precincts, those being the Oakview and Stratford Hall precincts in Fairfield, the Cedarfield precinct in Three Chopt, and the Laburnum precinct in Varina. Each of the 4 will move to nearby Henrico Schools. County officials will send 2 mailed notices to each registered voter in those precinct areas and also will post signs at the permanent precincts to let voters know of the changes. Henrico County Public Schools graduation rate has dropped during the past 2 years while the dropout rate has risen, especially for Hispanic and English learner students. That's according to data presented to the Henrico School Board last week. The county's graduation rate mirrored the Virginia rate roughly until 2018 when the county's rate of 92.3% rose above the state average of 91.6%. But the following year, the Henrico rate fell to 90.8%, and this year the county's rate rose just slightly to 91%, but still was below the statewide average of 92.3%. The school system's dropout rate for 2019 and 2020 was 6.7%, the highest it has been since 2012, according to HCPS Director of Assessment, Research, and Evaluation, Tiffany Hinton. This year, 270 Henrico students were reported as dropouts. Meanwhile, the state dropout rate was 5.6% last year and fell to 5.1% this year. All student groups except for white and Asian students saw declining graduation rates and increasing dropout rates this year compared to 2 years ago. Hispanic students and English learners saw the biggest changes. Hispanic students witnessed a 9% decrease in graduation rates and a 10.2% increase in dropout rates, while English learners experienced a 6.4-point decrease in their graduation rates and a 9.8-point increase in their dropout rates. Well, tonight at 6 p.m., Brookland District Supervisor Dan Schmidt will host a virtual constituent meeting to discuss voting in this year's election and to introduce Henrico County Police Chief Eric English. The meeting will last until 7:30. It'll take place on the WebEx video meeting platform and will give residents an opportunity to ask questions or share comments and concerns with Schmidt, English, and Registrar Mark Coakley. You can tune into the meeting by visiting henrico.us/calendar/Brookland-beat. Crews doing road work in Chester yesterday cut a Verizon cable that caused a network outage for several state agencies, including the Virginia Department of Elections, where the outage made it impossible for Virginians to register to vote on the final day before the deadline. By about 3:30, the Department of Elections website was back up and running, but that didn't stop Virginia Attorney General Mark Herring from petitioning for a 2-day extension through October 15th. The Virginia Legislative Black Caucus, led by Henrico Delegate Lamont Bagby, also called for an extension. You can read more about this on henricocitizen.com by clicking Government. Today's Henrico News Minute has been brought to you by the Lakeside Farmers Market. Visit them today between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. at 6110 Lakeside Avenue or visit facebook.com/Lakeside Market RVA to learn more.